Welcome to the Rotary Club of Edina. I'm your host, Josh Sprague, proud president of the #1 club in the universe. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today to this historic moment in the history of our club and the history of the world. A special welcome to all the members tuning into today's broadcast, and of course, to all the friends of Rotary and all of our community leaders also tuning in. This is an unprecedented live broadcast of our normal weekly meeting, which takes place Thursdays, 12:30 to 1:30 at the Edina Country Club. It's taken place in that location for decades. 100 people, business and community leaders gathering every week to get together to learn more about the world, what's going on, and for personal and professional development. So again, this is a major shift for us, having a live format for the meeting, and we appreciate your patience as we work through this together. So today we're broadcasting live from our Facebook page, which is facebook.com Edina Rotary. You can watch the live feed. You can also watch the recorded version, which will be posted later today on youtube.com, as well as our Facebook page. Don't worry, we will also share these links through our normal weekly newsletter, The Barker, as well as through email for anyone who's having any technical difficulty finding the page. I also want to consider, for all of us, downloading the Zoom application. This is a great platform that allows for online meetings with audio, video, and screen sharing that many companies and organizations are using now that we're in a quarantined, no-contact situation. We, in fact, just used Zoom for our very first time ever for our club board meeting this week. We'll be using it again on Friday for our foundation meeting. Again, Zoom is the application. It works on both your smartphone as well as your desktop and your laptop computers. I'm sure you're all aware of what's happening and how quickly society has shut itself down. But I wanted to share some passages from a recent article in the Wall Street Journal on Monday of this week, entitled How the Coronavirus Remade American Life in One Weekend. And the weekend they're talking about is the last weekend, just a few days past. The article says, America has begun to shut itself down. In a matter of days, the coronavirus pandemic has reshaped American society, unmooring people from the routines and activities that typically provide comfort in moments of crisis. Work, worship, concerts, sports, gathering with family and friends, and the embrace of loved ones. It feels a little like we're in a snowstorm, an invisible but present blizzard, where it is not safe to go outside, says a Roman Catholic bishop of Albany, New York. Home is the safest place to weather a storm. By Saturday, the country slid into a collective retreat from public life, as tens of millions of people settled in to wait, alone together, for an invisible threat with no clear end in sight. Change came swiftly as new cases emerged and businesses and public officials pivoted, first assuring people of extra efforts to keep restaurants and shops clean, then abruptly shutting down stores and parties on a St. Patrick's Day weekend that was almost balmy in the Northeast. The COVID-19 disease is highly contagious, selectively lethal, and often indistinguishable from colds and seasonal maladies. It strikes the sick and elderly, but seems to spare children, leaving many parents in the middle, kids out of school, vulnerable older relatives isolated in group homes, all while managing fluid work arrangements. For many, the isolation has been compounded by uncertainty. There aren't enough tests. There aren't enough hospital beds with ventilators. There's no vaccine, and there's no cure. Some chose to carry on, more concerned about the economic impact of mass withdrawal from public life. These are unprecedented times. There is no playbook. Also in the news, and more specific to the heart of Rotary, our International Rotary Convention in Hawaii has been canceled for the first time ever in the history of Rotary. Keep in mind, this convention hosts about 23,000 Rotarians from over 150 countries, all in one place. I'd like to share a message from current Rotary International President Mark Maloney about this historic cancellation. Mark says, Dear Rotarians, Rotaractors, and friends, let me get right to the unfortunate news. The Rotary International Board of Directors has decided to cancel the 2020 Rotary International Convention in Honolulu, Hawaii. We are all part of the Rotary family, and your safety remains our highest priority. Like the more than 20,000 attendees who are coming to the event, I am very disappointed. However, this is the right and necessary decision to protect the health and safety of convention attendees, as well as those who call Honolulu home. At this point, we are unsure that Rotary could adequately protect convention goers from the risk of COVID-19 infection en route to, during, and after the convention. We are also unsure if restrictions on travel to the United States will be lifted by June. We have heard from a number of you who voiced concern about gathering at the convention this year. I also heard from many of you who were hopeful that we could continue with the convention as planned. The board was very diligent and considered all the facts before taking this action. The convention has always been an opportunity for us to generate new energy for Rotary and to draw inspiration as we come together to celebrate, learn, and grow. Now is our moment to demonstrate Rotary connects the world in innovative ways. Let's redouble our focus and energy on the work we do in our own communities. We know the power and potential that lies within our simple act of connecting. This is particularly true when we lend helping, hopeful hands to others, especially those dealing with the effects of isolation and fear. As we do this, so too can we continue to collaborate on big projects using all of the technology and expertise at our disposal. We are exploring how we can share a convention-like experience with you through a virtual event, which allows a Rotary Action Plan goal of increasing our ability to adapt. I have no doubt that we will come through this and gather in the future to celebrate with an even deeper appreciation of our work, our experiences, and the many connections we've made through Rotary. Until then, thank you for your understanding of this difficult decision. Please know that we will make decisions as quickly as we can. And I am sure, as you can imagine, both Rotary members and staff are operating in a challenging situation. Please be safe as you continue to take action and do good throughout the world. Aloha and kindest regards. Rotary International President, Mark Daniel Maloney. So, again, we find ourselves in the middle of an unprecedented situation with our ability to adapt and serve others as the key to the exit. Until we have a little bit further news, we have to play the situation fluid. Of course, we'll be updating you as we can, our own Rotary Club members, about how meetings and speakers will continue. Alas, my own sentiment is that Rotarians have that optimism bias that Michelangelo Caruso talked about in his leadership seminar that many of us attended on March 10th, just 9 days ago, if you can believe it. And thank God at a moment like this, we can look past the immediate crisis and forward to where we can help to rebuild our community and our society and reach out to those in need, locally and internationally. Yes, that's right. Hope springs eternal. And in fact, some of you know that spring starts tonight at 10:50 p.m., although you wouldn't know it with the light snow that's coming. But indeed, spring cannot be stopped. And the Rotary Club of Edina, our city, state, and nation will find a way to overcome this crisis, to rebuild, and to come out the other side stronger because of it. To all of our members, if you have any announcements, if you have any questions, if you have any needs, please feel free to reach out to any of your officers, which include Secretary Joe Hayes, Treasurer Michael Stanzak, our President-elect Sam Thompson, past President John Flynn, and of course, myself. Again, we will continue to adapt and inform you as the situation develops. Now, I'd like to introduce Rotary Club of Edina member Gene Morrison and my son Charles Sprague, who will lead us in the invocation, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the four-way test.
We come into our Rotary Club to be of service to others through the strength of our Rotary objectives. We ask that we find energy and encouragement to live out the ideal of service in our personal, business, and community lives to the betterment of people in need, both in our local community and around the world, and especially in this unprecedented, trying time.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now, the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Awesome. Thank you, Gene and Chuck. Okay, today we have 3 different speakers we're going to be talking to. The first one is, of course, my great friend and fellow Rotarian, Gene Morrison. Many of you know Gene has run many great programs, including the Holiday Gift Program. She's co-chaired the gala at least twice. Lord knows you're a beast of burden, Gene, for doing that. But she has a great idea on a new program she's going to launch, and she's going to tell us a little bit about it today. So I'd like to welcome Gene Morrison. How are you?
Good.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us today on short notice.
I'm happy to be here.
In the Rotary TV studio, what do you think?
Yes, it's pretty impressive.
Okay, the hope is springing eternal already, just being here, isn't it?
It feels really exciting, and
Okay.
I'm excited to be here to talk to you about something.
Well, this is great. So tell us a little bit about the new program, which is called Edina Rotary Helping Hands.
So I was sitting up about 1 in the morning watching news and heard about all the needs of especially the elderly, our senior folks. And I started thinking about who do I know in Rotary who might need some help. The first name that came to my mind was Tom Persh. And then I started thinking, well, there are other people who might need our help as well. So I had an idea, floated it by you and others, and here's my idea. In this trying time of uncertainty during the COVID-19 virus pandemic, we in Edina Rotary have an opportunity to do what we do best. Reach out and serve. We are better together. We all know that. Edina Rotary Helping Hands is an initiative aimed at supporting others by reaching out to check in, connect and assist with specific needs our senior Rotarians and others in need have during this time of quarantine. Mm-hmm. So as fellow Rotarians, here's what we can do to help. We can help with grocery shopping and running errands. We can pick up prescriptions. We can pick up and deliver takeout food. We can make a trip to the post office. We can provide ride to appointments. We could make a check-in phone call or an email, or we could send a postal greeting card to say you're thinking about someone. Just to let people know you're on our minds and how are you doing, what needs might you have. Here's how this works. If you're interested in helping, or you know an Edina Rotarian who might benefit from this, either yourself or someone else, if you want to be a helping hand, or if you need a helping hand, contact me. My phone number is 612-804-2409, or my email address, jean@jeanmorrisonhr.com. And of course, we're going to be doing all of this in the safest, most responsible ways.
Right.
In advance, I thank our members for your time, your hands, and your heart to this Edina Rotary Helping Hands program. It's important for us to remember what makes us Rotarians: service and connecting the world. And it's my belief that now is the time for us to come together and be there for one another.
This is such a great program, and I really appreciate your just brainstorming this and pulling this together so quickly. I think it's an example of we the strength of Rotary continuing to adapt in the middle of this crisis.
Right.
So I want to ask you, you've already made a couple calls. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing out there for needs. And also, tell me the statistic. How many Rotarians over the age of 70 do we have in the club that may benefit?
We have 53 members over 70, but we may have others who have needs as well. So if you are aware of other members who have needs, I'd like to know about that, and we will have a group of helpers. So we have two groups. We have the requesters and we have the helpers. So we have 53 over 70. Each of those people will get an initial phone call just to check in. So
Right.
I've done a couple of them, and
That's 1/3 of the club, just about.
yeah, it was a meaningful number when I got the list from Becky. What I found in the phone calls that I made, I learned some things about the individuals. One is one person said, I bought food last week and I have enough food for this week. When I went to buy my food, I also went to Walgreens and they gave me 90 days more of my prescriptions than I needed so that I would be prepared.
Right.
So they now have food and they have prescriptions, but they have food for 1 week. So what I said is, I will call you by the end of this week. I also learned that this is a person who's in an assisted living, independent situation, and they're going to be delivering the food to their door rather than having them come and eat in groups.
Right.
And so they had a question mark. They weren't sure about that yet. So there were lots of questions. So what we're finding is just taking a temperature. How are things with you now? What might be some of your needs? And the needs that I identified, some things that we can help them with. There are quite a few things that we can help them with. However, we want to do it in a safe way for
Right.
everyone. So I ran off the list from the Red Cross of how to be safe. So the people that will be our helpers, they will get that same list.
Great. Now this could springboard into something else after the crisis is over and people are moving around again. I know a lot of people in the community may be in need. Those needs may not even be defined at this point. So Rotary
Right.
Helping Hands could expand after the crisis. I can see how a lot of seniors would be just in a really bad situation. Nutrition, social, all of the things seniors struggle with to begin with.
Yeah.
Now in the midst of this crisis is only making it worse. So
Yeah.
what a thoughtful
Just to
and
check in,
generous outreach.
see what they need.
Really, honestly.
Yeah.
And everybody out there, you know how to get a hold of Jean. She's given you her contact information. You can also find that on the Club Runner app or at the Club Runner directory online. So thank you again for
You're
being
welcome.
with us, and great to see you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah. Okay. Now, our next guest is actually another great friend from the community. Not a Rotarian yet, although he's on our prospect list. And this is Cliff Van Leuven, Federal Security Director for Minnesota for the Transportation Security Administration, which, as you know, is part of Homeland Security Agency. Cliff is responsible for 800 TSA employees at the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport, as well as 8 additional federalized airports throughout the state. Cliff lives here in Edina with his wife Jill, but also travels to Florida, and so has a pretty good perspective on these 2 states. And I think that's an important thing for Rotarians to know, as we have many snowbirds. Of those 53 out of 175 members over 70, many of them are traveling back and forth from the state of Florida as we speak, as part of their normal snowbirding. So please help me recognize and introduce Cliff Van Leuven. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Josh. Thank you.
So first of all, I just want to say thank you for being here on short notice. We've pulled together this studio and this program so quickly. A big shout out to our videographer, Chris Laskowski, who's worked with us for years. He's off camera, but I encourage anyone who needs video services at this crucial time, please reach out to Chris. He's a great videographer, and more than that, a great person. So again, your flexibility in coming in, we appreciate it. We know you're on the front lines working with Homeland Security. Can you just tell us a little bit about your background and what you do in your position?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm a Florida boy. I grew up in the Tampa-St. Pete area. That's where my family and friends still are. But I married a Minnesota farm girl 25 years ago, and so we've been here in the Twin Cities, living in Edina now, for the last 7.5 years, when I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution and protect the traveling public. So, as you said, I lead a team of about 850 employees around the state at 9 federalized airports. We're up at International Falls and as far south as the home of the Mayo Clinic in Rochester. But these are, it's an amazing time to lead a large group of people, dedicated public servants, who have to be at work to serve the needs of the public who still need to travel during a period that's as uncertain as we're in right now.
Right. So tell us what is happening at the airports right now in terms of the protocols.
Well, Minneapolis Airport is as sleepy as it's been. It's as quiet as it's been. Airports around the country, for the most part, are as quiet as they've been for probably since September 11th. I mean, it's that level of impact. To give you some numeric view of how things look, we're still in the middle of what should be peak spring break travel. We would have expected probably 45,000 passengers to come through the door at Minneapolis Airport just yesterday. So 45,000 will be a typical spring break day for us. Yesterday we had under 10,000 people, 9,927 travel.
Wow.
So about 76% less than we would typically have expected. A shocking decline in passenger volume. So the airport is a very quiet place, somewhat scary in that when you walk around the terminal, there's more employees still on site than there are passengers at times between the big carriers, Delta and American and United, and both at Terminal 1 and Terminal 2. And then, of course, all of our frontline officers are there.
So what type of protocols are in place now? What has changed since, pre-virus and now in terms of how travelers are moving through those checkpoints?
Well, they're moving through very quickly, that's for sure. But we're also, we're following the National Centers for Disease Control guidance on how to protect the traveling public, but also, I have to be concerned about how I protect our frontline staff. So,
right.
We're doing all the protocols with personal protective equipment, gloves. In some cases, our officers are wearing masks. And sterilizing our equipment. We're working closely with the Metropolitan Airports Commission, the MSP airport staff, and the airlines to make sure that the entirety of the airport, but certainly our checkpoints, are getting a good scrubbing. In some regards, as painful as this episode is, we hardly ever get a chance to stand down, and because we're so busy in this robust economy,
right,
that this gives us a chance to really give the place a good scrub. So we're doing everything we can. I'm doing everything I can as the Federal Security Director to protect my staff, who are face-to-face and have to be face-to-face, and in some cases hands-on with the traveling public, but also to ensure the safety and security of the public that still need to travel even in the face of this threatening environment.
So is your agency issuing any guidance to the travelers themselves? Anything that they can do to protect themselves as they're moving through the checkpoints and traveling around the United States?
Yeah, actually a couple of things. The first guidance is if you're sick, please don't travel. We had a situation at one of our airports in the state yesterday where there was a gentleman an elderly gentleman who had a cough that he couldn't control. And so when that's going on in an airport environment these days, other passengers recoil from that,
right,
fearful that they may be getting on an airplane for an hour or 2 or 3 or 4 with this person. Coronavirus aside. So if you're sick, we'd ask, everybody would ask that you don't travel. If you absolutely have to travel, I would say it's probably a good idea to get a mask and wear a mask, because the mask will protect everyone that you come in contact with from what may be coming out when you sneeze or cough. TSA changed a requirement just this week, allowing passengers to bring 12-ounce bottles of hand sanitizer, because we always want to be wiping our hands and keeping our hands clean, but also the areas that we're dealing with. So we've changed our 3.4 ounce rule as it pertains to hand sanitizers to allow 12 ounce, which is a pretty good sized bottle of Purell or any of the standard hand sanitizers. And certainly the Clorox wipes, as the CDC recommends, bleach and alcohol wipes are a good idea to clean the area that you're going through. And we'd ask, as you get to the security checkpoint, that you give yourself a wipe potentially, and then as you leave the checkpoint, give your hands a good going over and wash your hands.
As well as those personal devices.
Absolutely.
Coming through.
Absolutely.
So tell us any indication on what the future holds. What is the discussion right now? What's happening right now about?
Well, not surprisingly, just with everything else in the nation, air transportation and the Transportation Security Administration are hopeful that this doesn't last very long. Both my wife and I grew up in the airline business. We spent I spent 20 years with Northwest Airlines. My wife was a flight attendant for Northwest for many years. And I worked for Midwest Express Airlines in Milwaukee and then Frontier Airlines in Denver before I joined public service. So our heart goes out to those in the airline industry who are impacted by this. It's a time that, my gosh, I hope we figure this out, and I hope we get back to airlines flying with maybe not as full as they were before, because it was hard to get a seat. But airports are the work that TSA does in support of this amazing industry, air travel, is really something. And in this robust economy that we had, and the volume of passengers that TSA officers were face to face with every day, we miss that. That's what we do. And so, and TSA has more face-to-face contact with the American public than any other federal agency.
Right.
An average day is 2 to 2.5 million passengers. And what we've seen recently nationwide is in the range of 800,000 to 900,000. So a dramatic decline in travel. So I don't have any crystal ball. I wish I did, but we want things to get back to normal as quickly as possible.
Well, I just want to say one thing to all of the frontline staff. Our most sincere thank you for their service. They don't have a position where they can kind of just opt out. They have to stand in place and continue to provide that security no matter what. Even though there's maybe 25,000 passengers a day instead of 75, we still owe them a debt of gratitude. And to all the first responders and everyone else who's out there taking a risk every day with their own lives. So please extend our thank you from the Rotary Club of Edina, and also to you. I appreciate you giving us a quick briefing. Maybe in the future, depending on how things work out, you can come back and give us the next update. But thanks again for being with us, and I'm glad that the Minnesota Vortex got you, because that spouse always wins. I relocate people from all over the country, and it's always one person from Minnesota, and they always win that fight.
They always do, for some reason.
So God bless the state of Minnesota and that Minnesota Vortex.
Thanks, Josh.
All right, thanks for being here. We'll see you soon.
All right.
Okay, so now it brings us to our keynote speaker today, which is Jeff Robbins from Avisen Legal PA, who also runs Angel Pollination. Let me tell you a little bit about Jeff. Currently, Jeff's an attorney with Avisen Legal PA, and for over 36 years, he's represented entrepreneurs who start and grow technology-based enterprises and angel and venture investors who target those companies. He is also the founder of Angel Pollination, a Twin Cities networking organization that furthers awareness, communication, and education among solo investors, informal investment clubs, and formal angel investment groups. He's also an advisory board member to Go for Angels, a local investor network. Jeff is married to our fellow Rotarian and TRF chair, Susan Stiles, and they live here in Edina. Please come over this way, Jeff, and we'd like to extend a warm Rotary welcome to Jeff Robbins. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Greetings.
Please have a seat.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody.
Man, you are the first speaker who agreed to come do this live with us. We appreciate you, being here, having the flexibility, as we mentioned, continuing to adapt as this crisis unfolds, which I'm sure you're doing in your business and all the companies you work with are doing in their business. One thing I didn't have a chance to do was get your full family biography. And so I want you just to tell us a little bit about your family members. Besides,
sure.
We all know and love Susan.
Right,
of
right.
course.
Well,
everybody knows Susan.
Everybody knows Susan.
But tell us about the rest of the family.
So we have 4 kids,
Yep.
all of whom are here in town, all of whom are married.
Yep.
And so eldest daughter is an ER doc over in St. Paul.
Very busy.
And so she's been out on the front line with all of this coronavirus stuff.
Yep.
And but she's been cut off from working on the front line because she's pregnant with our second grandchild due in early June, and
congratulations.
And her physician put her on disability earlier this week and said, "You aren't going to be exposed anymore for the benefit of your child until this is over and done." So unfortunately, we lose one important ER doc right when we need them, but she'll be back. Certainly on the back end of this, and they live in New Brighton with our granddaughter, will be 3 in April. So we're looking forward to her birthday and having lots of fun with her. Let's see. Susan's daughter is a neuroscientist who is working on her postdoctoral work in a Parkinson's lab at the University of Minnesota. And her husband is a data scientist with SureScripts, the pharmacy benefit management company. And they live over near Lake Nokomis. And then our son, Kevin, is in the automotive industry. He just joined a private equity-backed software company that sells customer relationship management software for automotive dealerships. So he's going to have responsibility for Minnesota and other upper Midwestern states. And his wife also works for the Luther Automotive Group.
Okay.
So they are an automotive family. And they live in Plymouth and are looking to adopt some children right now. And then our youngest daughter, Brooke, is following in my footsteps, good, bad, or indifferent. She is in her 3rd year of law school at the University of Minnesota.
Oh, wow.
And will be joining the Lathrop GPM firm, formerly Gray Plant Moody, for those who don't know that it merged with to become a much bigger firm in January. So her plan is to be a courtroom lawyer, a litigator, and her husband is an actuary with the Travelers over in St. Paul, and they live over in St. Paul on Grand Avenue, where all of the good retail stuff is now probably all closed.
It's all shuttered for now,
right? It's all
right?
shuttered for right now, yes, indeed. So we are fortunate to have our whole crew here in town.
Great. Thank you for that background. I was waiting to hear a little bit more about that. So what you do is very interesting. So you're a lawyer on the side, not on the side. That's your primary purpose is lawyering. But you've also started this Angel Pollination to help support startups and kind of matching startups with investors and so on. But so tell me a little bit about your legal work in the field, and then what led to Angel Pollination.
Exactly so. So what I do is I work with entrepreneurs who start and grow technology companies and investors who invest in that kind of thing. So what that covers is a very broad plethora. It tends to be, things. At one time it was Indian casino gaming, for those who've been in Minnesota long enough and remember when that became a hot commodity. Data storage, data security. Medical device is obviously a very important thing here in Minnesota.
Right.
Healthcare technology. Clearly now there's a whole new thought about what kinds of things are probably appropriate in potentially recessionary times, at least for a little while here in that sense. So I do a lot of work with companies who are starting out doing that and helping them organize how they will be a business and how they will.
So that was your niche in your professional life when you started,
right?
And then you just got more and more interested in. And then what did you see out there?
Because I've always been working with these companies, what I observed is that there was an awful lot of organizations that existed to support the entrepreneur. And very little focused on supporting the investor themselves. So back in 2011, on the backside of the last of the Great Recession, one of the things that happens, unfortunately, in early stage investing opportunities is when a recession hits, often investors scatter the way of the wind.
Right.
Because it's an asset class to spend your money. You don't spend all your money investing in early stage stuff, and there tends to be less of it in recessionary times. And investors tend.
It's a flight to safety.
It's a flight to safety.
Right.
And investors tend to come back to this kind of investing late on the return side of things. So seeing that late return back in 2011, and seeing the fact that things were very disjointed, I decided that we needed to create an organization that would be focused on the investor. And so that's what we do. We do them over at Interlochen Country Club 4 times a year. And it's an old-fashioned networking organization. Would love to obviously have all of you here at Rotary. Those who are interested, you can contact Josh and he'll connect you on with. We were planning our next event for April 16th, but we've now pushed it to May 12th, and we'll see whether or not that works.
Join the club.
Join the
Flexibility,
club.
right?
Flexibility is what one must have. But we always have. It's a good opportunity to connect with other investors. We usually have 30 to 40 investors who participate, and we always have goings on in the investment community here in town. I usually bring back a presenter from a prior time to benchmark what they've accomplished since they had been in front of the group previously.
Yeah.
We always have a speaker on some topic of interest. So our April 12th meeting, or April 16th meeting, now pushed to May 12, will feature Patrick O'Shaughnessy from the O'Shaughnessy family that most of you know from St. Thomas.
Yeah.
But they are just rolling out a brand new distillery for Irish whiskey that will be constructed over by Surly over in southeast Minneapolis.
I would think alcohol sales in times like this would go up.
And guess what? That is a discussion that certainly a variety of investors were asking the question of what happens to spirit sales in recession, and the answer is it does go up.
It has a little more elastic demand.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely so. So that project garnered a lot of interest from local investors and of course family investors around the country. So he's going to talk about the concept of how do you co-invest with a family office, because there's a lot of O'Shaughnessy family members, and then a variety of outside angel investors who joined on in. How do you participate in that kind of a thing? So we'll always have a topic of interest every time, and then I always have 3 companies from Minnesota that come and present and talk about what they're doing and the money they need to raise to take the next step where they're going. And they're usually pretty early stage. I try to pick companies that I hope that 80% of the folks in attendance have never even heard of, or at the very least have not seen a presentation from before. So that's what angel pollination is about. It's really to make connections.
I love innovation. I love technology. I wish that Susan Stiles would have invited me to one of these events. So I'm gonna have to talk to that young lady about this. But so tell me, before this crisis hit, what was hot? Maybe you can share a few companies from our own town of Edina that you were either representing or knew about. But what's hot, and what's hot specifically in Edina that you've been working with?
Well, there aren't that many startups, in and of itself in Edina, but I did kind of go back, kind of the history. So we've had some that are, that you would recognize. Caribou Coffee. Started in 1992 as a startup here in Edina.
Okay.
And we, of course, now know that to be rather national in scope. And
100 yards away, we got a Caribou Coffee,
100
right?
yards away, we have a Caribou Coffee.
Yeah.
They're about 100 yards away from everywhere.
Right.
It seems you go at this juncture. So that was a very important one. A more current one, a pair of young teenagers started a company called The Bomb, and they sell bath fizzlers.
They were at our Rotary Club. They presented presented.
Yes,
Twice
yes.
they presented.
Yes.
Once on their first product, phase, and then afterwards, after they had all the success and the wholesalers
Right.
drumming on their door trying to get access.
Absolutely. So they're now. They reported that sales would hit 20 million in 2018. I don't know quite where they are now,
Wow.
but it's a very successful startup. You have the first brew pub for beer is now here in Edina. Wooden Hill Brewery, which is over in our neighborhood. Not
Another local Edina
another
Rotary watering hole, right?
Another watering hole, and there's been a lot of investment in those from people in local communities who want to have a local watering hole, and they've been investing into these things. And you've seen a lot. The millennial crowd really likes the experiential kind of thing, so you've seen a lot of that. We did have one here in Edina that just actually went into bankruptcy in February, which is kind of too bad because it had 16 million of investment into it. It was a medical device company focused called Theorem DX. It was a spin-out from the University of Minnesota, and it was developing a handheld molecular diagnostic technology, specifically that would be able to cover things like coronavirus and be able to do rapid testing, of it. So unfortunately, that company just wasn't able to come up with a product that they could get to market in time before they ran out of money.
Right.
And that happens. That's one of the risks of investing in early stage startups is they don't always make it.
Biotech in Minnesota, obviously, we have a lot of interest in a lot of companies trying to enter that field.
We do.
Is there any chance we'll see the resurrection of some of those companies in the wake of this crisis? This is such a huge sector for Minnesota, and it seems like that would be an area where there's lots of things that could develop. You're looking at other countries, how they responded, especially with the testing, places like South Korea I think South Korea had the most testing per day immediately.
Right.
And how they fought off the peak and got things to level out quickly is a great testament, and maybe that's a model that some other companies may be interested in.
It is. I don't think that like that particular technology probably will not make its way back into this particular cycle.
Okay.
The rights to that technology have gone back to the University of Minnesota, and so now it will be the responsibility of the university to place it with another. If they can find another company that believes they can raise the capital and take the technology as it's been developed so far and move forward and try to create something new with it. We've got an interesting one here in Edina called Irrigreen.
Okay.
So what Irrigreen is, it's a technology that prints water for lawn sprinkling. So your typical lawn sprinkler, of course, puts a little thing up out of the ground and starts spraying water in a big circle, right?
Right.
And so it cares not, whether it's spraying your sidewalk or spraying trees as compared to the grass. And so this is technology that is come essentially out of the laser printer technology that allows the company to be able to, you can program your sprinkler head so that it will actually draw where it is you actually want it to sprinkle to, and so it will shoot water streams.
Smart watering.
Smart watering. It will shoot farther out to get to a farther area and shoot closer in to get to things to go around, a sidewalk or.
Can also alter the spray pattern.
And you can
from
alter the
wide
spray
to
pattern
narrow.
and the quantity that's
Sometimes
being
you have
sprayed.
little shrubs here, but then beyond something else.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's a very interesting technology, as you can imagine. Particularly, they're starting to have uptake of this technology, particularly in Western states where where water is a tougher commodity because
Right.
you can save a substantial amount of water using a technology like this. So these are the kinds of things all over the place. I took a quick look. The Securities and Exchange Commission collects information about young companies that are raising money, and I noted of interest that the greatest quantity of Minnesota companies that in the first 3 months here have actually publicly announced that they've raised some sort of funding have been companies in the data security space, which is probably very important in a world where we're increasingly, at the moment, doing work from home.
And also cybersecurity. I'm thinking of a recent report in D.C. saying that the United States is woefully unprepared for a lot of these cyber attacks and other things
Correct,
as well.
correct. And if you thought that corporate America was having difficulties keeping a cyber attack from occurring, you can only imagine that the individual homes of corporate executives are an even bigger potential target going forward, now that more business is going to be done at home, at least in the foreseeable future. And nobody was prepared for, true combat level kind of cybersecurity in their home. I think a lot of us have become aware that we need security of sorts, but how many of us have the level of security over our data at home that we do when we're in our work environments?
On the most basic level, think about just the Wi-Fi passwords. Most people don't have Wi-Fi passwords.
Correct.
Those that do, what is it, 77777 or 12345678890?
Right.
I mean, this is just the most basic level of security, isn't even
If you
there.
don't want to use one that has weird numbers, characters, and letters, then come up with a phrase like, "My mother lives in Florida." I got news for you. That would be a hard thing for somebody to figure out, that typing in "my mother lives in Florida" is your password to get into your Wi-Fi. So there are some easy things that people can do in that sense, and not that I'm here to be your cybersecurity expert.
But it's a universal need.
But
and
it's
so
a
this
universal
company,
need, and it's one of those things that you see, obviously, in the nature of what it is that I do in the companies that I work with. That is an area that is certainly ripe for investment even before we've gotten to where we're at now. And now I would even say it feels like even more so that would be something that makes sense for the world, because it's going to be needed all that more so. But layered, I think, on top of all of this is just the growth in general of startups, generally speaking. The Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City does national studies about the rate of entrepreneurship in the country, and actually they'd reported for many years that Minnesota was a laggard, like practically 47th in the nation, with only Mississippi and a few others behind it on a per capita kind of basis, which those of us who are involved in the entrepreneurial community an awful lot didn't really believe those numbers. All of a sudden now, the new numbers that are coming out would suggest that it's a very different environment in Minnesota, and it's hard not to hear about new companies starting up here. And why is that? Of course, the business schools now are all into this. The large corporations are not hiring people at the same rates that they used to, and people are working longer and deciding that they want to try something different, and so they're starting out and they're creating things. And when they go out and they create these things, there's always then the need for capital, and that capital is either your next door neighbor that you went and hit up to invest in a thing, or you're looking for larger amounts of capital and more formalized kind of capital. And the structure is look for angel investors at groups of the sort that either I run or that others are here in town, or that you'll see the growth then into venture capital. And the exit strategy for companies used to be to take them public. To create a public stock offering so their stock would be tradable, so that investors would have a place to sell their stock and make their money back. But now it's we build companies to sell them. So the exit strategy for my clients tends to be, as we build them, they get to a certain point, somebody buys them.
So what changed the situation? One thing I can think of that's changed over the last 10 years is this development of the Regional Economic Authority, greater MSP.
Yep.
I remember when that came out of the Itasca task force or something.
Yes.
And at that time, one of the benefits was the promotion of these small startup companies in the state of Minnesota in the major sectors, food, biotech, et cetera. Was that a catalyst, or were there other things that happened in between that brought us to be a stronger powerhouse for these young companies?
I mean, those were great initiatives. I would say that it didn't feel in the end like some of those focuses really came down to entrepreneurial stuff
Specifically
as much
okay.
so. Now we do have a new thing that's just started this year called Launch Minnesota, which is an initiative that the Department of Economic Development over at the state is spearheading. And there is a group of young companies that have all gotten some grants, now from the state, and a variety of groups that are actually have gotten grants to provide educational assistance about teaching people about entrepreneurial skills to actually help build that. So what I would say is that there's been a huge uptick in this entrepreneurial activity over the last 5 years, and I think it's with the changing of the guard from the baby boom generation to the millennial generation, which increasingly has been more mobile in terms of moving from one company to another, being more consultants to companies than full-time employees, and that has led to everything. Now that we have everything online, and increasingly so, leads to easier ways to get things started. And the easier it is to start a business, the more likely there will be people who will do so.
So now tell me a little bit about the support at the University of Minnesota. Interesting fact, just totally unrelated to today, but connected, is we had a vocational day scheduled for the spring at the Discovery Nexus, which is this tech incubator support at the University of Minnesota. I don't think it's been around very long, but it seems like the University of Minnesota itself has gotten more involved. Tell me how that's created or fostered a better environment.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a decade ago, the concept of the University of Minnesota working with its professors to identify technologies and to bring them out and commercialize those technologies was pretty rare. In a typical year, I would say, if the University of Minnesota managed to launch one company, that would be a big deal.
10 years ago, one company a year.
A decade ago, that might have been typical. Now the pace is 20 or more companies a year that get started up out of University of Minnesota technologies. Now, the good news is that very fact. The bad news is that you've got a lot of companies out there that are looking for money, and not all of them succeed at finding money to be able to grow their businesses. But the fact that the university is now very much created a pipeline. There's a lot of deep education now that goes on with professors. They do a lot of Discovery Nexus and the Office of Technology Commercialization, OTC, that runs Discovery Nexus, has really done a lot to create an environment over at the university with its professors to encourage them to come forward and disclose things that they found. And then what the university has done is they've created a business advisory group, which some of you may decide that it might be interesting to participate. All are invited to participate at the Business Advisory Group meetings. They are online. Their first online one was actually yesterday, but they're typically over at the McNamara Center over at the university.
Right where Discovery Nexus is.
Right where Discovery Nexus is, and they hold it in that space.
Okay.
And what they tend to be is they are a round table of things entrepreneurial that are going on at the university. You get a lot of people in the business community, both folks who are in transition looking for new opportunities. Plus, you got service people, you've got tech people, you got all kinds of different disciplines that come, and then they will typically have 3 university startups. Professors who've got a technology that they think should be spun out, who will come and talk about what it is, and then seek advice from the group as it breaks up into
how to further
pods,
commercialize it,
on how to commercialize it.
Okay.
And typically what the university seeks to do is to have the professor partner with a business person from the community to be the business person, the CEO of the company, with the professor being the chief science officer, chief technology officer of the company, to help commercialize that technology. And the university has made it more user-friendly in the sense they used to try to seek reimbursement very early on from spun out companies for the expenses the university has had for creating patents and other expenses, which was a great burden to young companies, but now the university recognizes that is a burden. And so now they now take a small piece of equity and, generally speaking, don't hit the companies very hard, at least not early on, in terms of having to pay monies to the university, recognizing it takes time for a company to build.
This is all moving in the right direction for Minnesota. I love to hear these things. There's another thing you're involved in that's very interesting to me, and this is an annual contest I believe you're a judge or on a panel or something. Tell us a little bit about
The
that.
Minnesota Cup competition?
The Minnesota Cup, yes.
The
Tell
Minnesota
us about
Cup.
that.
So the Minnesota Cup is, I believe it to be the largest statewide business plan competition in the country. Typically, we get about 1,200 entrants just from the state of Minnesota.
Wow.
Folks who seek that. So it's a process that's starting about now, actually. Typically, there's lots of meetings that will now go on to talk about the Minnesota Cup and have past participants
You're going to be
tell
zooming.
you all about
You're going to
it.
be zooming all this
It's
stuff.
going to be yes. The Zooms are starting to line up
Yeah.
for this thing at the moment in today's world. But the Minnesota Cup is a business plan competition that will get a large funnel of opportunities, and eventually will funnel them down into 10 different categories, everything from technology, medical device, food and beverage.
So they sector it out a little
They'll
bit.
sector
Okay.
it on out, and they will eventually get to the point where there is a winner of each division who will end up getting prize money, and then there is a grand prize presentation to a committee of about 40 local investors, entrepreneurs, who come together as a judging panel for a final decision of the winner of the Minnesota Cup, who I think this past year got $120,000.
Wow. And more importantly for the rest, they're getting some exposure
Great
to the
exposure
capital that we're talking about.
The farther you get into the process, the more mentorship you get. So you start
Okay.
getting people who sign up to be your mentor, to help you
Yep.
on the business, to help you with your plan, to help you with your strategy. And so we'll see companies come through the competition multiple years. So we'll see folks who end up being a winner who may have that may have been their third year that they participated in the competition to get to that particular point, because they had started out but they found by going through this process they keep getting more mentorship, which of course is free to them.
So we have the most preliminary version of this program at the Rotary Club of Edina called Camp Enterprise, which
Yes.
I know you volunteered for.
Yes.
Started 30 years ago. Same concept. Kids are pulling together business plans with Rotarians mentoring them, and they present to this Shark Tank-like group of investors, which
Exactly.
I've done before, which has been so much fun. And figuring out how they bring these products to market and coming up with marketing and financing plans and all that. It's a really interesting experience. And I think that for Rotarians that participate in that group, maybe they would be interested in participating in the Minnesota Cup as mentors as well.
I think
How do you get involved if you're a business person in the local community?
So the easiest way, folks, is again, ping Josh, with your interest in Minnesota Cup, and I'll get you connected on that front so that you'll know about that. The University of Minnesota now, the Carlson School actually now is the principal sponsor and is responsible for running the program. It was actually founded by two local entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs, Scott Lemon and Dan Mallon, who currently have a company called, you ever had the moment where you lost the name of the company? So the product is Lucy AI. So what they have is they have a software program which runs on the IBM Watson artificial intelligence platform for the advertising and marketing industry to be able to do deep research to make decisions about where you're going to place your bets about investing in products and advertising and marketing in a manner that with normal human intervention might take several weeks. They can reduce it down to the matter of a day. Or two, using the Lucy AI technology. And why am I forgetting?
E3.
Oh, what?
E3.
Equals 3. Yes, thank you.
Equals
Yes,
3.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, equals 3. You ever had the moment where you lost it, or I lost it? So Equals 3 is the name of that particular company. So its founders are the ones who started the Minnesota Cup competition, now in its 13th year, I think, this year.
And what month does that occur in?
The finale occurs in October.
Okay.
But the competition with people starting to apply starts in April.
The finale's in October. That's just about the time. Can't be as in November. It'd be great to have some of those attendees or maybe past winners
Oh, they'd love
get
to
into the?
Yeah,
There's something you can watch.
There's a student division.
Is there something you can watch
Yes.
online, or how do you participate?
Well,
as
at
an
this
audience?
juncture, of course,
In October.
Yes,
when
in October when the big finale actually takes
Yep.
place. It's over at the McNamara Center in their big
Oh, wow.
space there.
Wow,
and
that's
so
great.
it usually brings, I'd say usually 400 to 500, well, probably a bigger number, 500-600 people.
And is that a free event for attendees?
It is a free event
okay.
for attendees.
Something we'll have to keep our eye on for both our students and our
students would
members.
have
That sounds like a great.
would really find that to be a great thing to do. And for that matter, of course, I like having students come from time to time over to Angel Pollination as well too, because it's a more confined environment, obviously, in a smaller group. But the answer is you get to see the process by which companies actually are asking for money of investors. And in fact, we even have funds that are seeking to raise money from investors that will come and present. And that always I find fascinating, because the companies will say, gee, we always are going to the funds looking for the money. This is the first time we've heard a fund pitching to look for money for itself.
Right.
And that's an education in and of itself. So it's a lot of fun. It's really fascinating. It's nerve-wracking, because we used to think about that investing in early stage companies would be something that you'd see an exit in 3 to 5 years, then it became 5 to 7 years, and now I think the average is 10 to 12 years. So it's a long-term investment play. We rarely see things that are overnight successes. Occasionally we see that, but rarely do we do so. They tend to be businesses now that started out at the ground floor,
right,
and produce, on the back end, some very good returns for investors. Because the typical venture investor, when they come into a company, in their mind, they think they're going to make 10 times their money. Which means that if you were an earlier investor, you hope you're going to make a lot more than 10 times your money.
Right. So I know this is the point where I ask you to pull out your crystal ball, and it's the most difficult time to do it is in uncertainty. But you mentioned after the '08, the Great Recession of '08, things kind of dried up. Do you see things playing out the same way with this coronavirus for the sector, or is it because of the coronavirus that perhaps we'll see more startups and more capital enter that market?
I think what will I can think about it this way. So, structurally, 2008 was a real problem with the economy. It wasn't something that kind of came on in an instant sort of sense, and so it did take quite a while. But the return to investing after the crash in 1987, we were back doing public stock offerings within 6 months. They were of a different kind. People didn't want to invest in buying an actual company. They wanted to invest in a shell that would take the cash and leave the management team with the discretion to go find some private company to merge into the public company. But nevertheless, people were back investing rather quickly at that time. I like to think that maybe where we're at now, being optimistic about this, is that by analogy this could be similar to that this is just an event that is going to occur. We will make our way through this, and that people will look on the back end of it. But the important thing to think about this is that even if this lasts longer, the important point with them would be to think about what's the right kind of investment to make, because if you think we're going to be in a recession for a long time, then you want to think about businesses and opportunities that will be more recession-proof, or if we aren't going to be able to have live events and be together as much, and it's going to be more online, then you're going to see a lot more investment into things that make working at home and with each other easier, better, faster, cheaper. Right now, I think Zoom.
Good example, right?
I think their stock price is probably doing pretty well because everybody is sitting around Zoom invitations all over the place.
And Amazon's hiring 100,000
And
workers.
Amazon's hiring 100,000 people.
Yep.
So and I got a note yesterday from Dixon's cleaning service saying we'll come to your house and help clean up and the bugs and everything that are around the house. Whether that can really work or not, who knows? But the point is that
they're adapting.
The unfortunate circumstance for a lot of people is actually an opportunity for others, and good investors think about where are those opportunities.
They're looking ahead.
Yep.
Wow, this is so much great information today. I want you to tell the camera and our audience, where can they find more information about angel pollination, whether they're an entrepreneur or an investor?
Yes, indeed. So here's the gig. Angel Pollination is a networking organization in an old-fashioned sense. So we don't have a website. You actually have to connect with me to get an invitation to the events. As I say, they're over at Interlochen Country Club. We typically do them April, June, October, and December.
And what's the best email to reach you?
And the best email to send is jrobbins, JROBBINS, jrobbins at Avisen Legal. That's A as in Alpha, V Victor, I S as in Sam, E N as in Nancy, avisenlegal.com. jrobbins at avisenlegal.com. Look forward to getting a note from some of you folks. Thanks.
Awesome. And you know what? I have to say, I think that he would make a great Edina Rotarian. You already have your wife in the club.
There you go.
Hey, maybe it could work out. I'm just saying, like, this is an opportunity for our club to grow and get new members in and fresh faces as well, and we just appreciate you so much, as I mentioned to our other guests, in the midst of this crisis, taking time out of your schedule to be here with us. And I just want to tell you that in appreciation of your visiting here today, we're going to make a donation to our Rotary's only disaster relief partner,
Excellent.
Which is Shelterbox, that works around the world helping people recovering from natural and other disasters.
That is very kind, and that is a good thing to do, and I appreciate that. And thank you all. This was fun to do, and thank you for doing it as well. And this is a lovely home here. If you're looking for a lovely home in Edina,
4012 Sunnyside. There we go.
4012 Sunnyside. It is a lovely home. I can tell you that. Thank you.
Great to see you. Okay. Well, a couple quick announcements coming up. First of all, as you can imagine, we have a shuffle in our speaker calendar. We will get that information out to you through the barcode on the website. But next week, we're waiting to see if Ellen Kennedy, who is going to talk about the state of hate in the United States, is able to Zoom in with us. Otherwise, we'll have a speaker replacing that. We'll get that news out to you immediately. On the 2nd of April, which was our previously scheduled Prospective Member Day. Obviously, that's canceled. We have Dr. Alan Rosenstein, a constitutional law professor from the University of Minnesota, and thanks to member Paul Moody for arranging this. He's going to Zoom in with us most likely. We're going to figure out how to display that and get that out to you on the live show with our #1 professional and expert on this, Chris Laskowski, behind the camera. And then on April 9th, we had John Kaufman from H2 Open Doors flying in from California to talk to our club. Again, he may be Zooming in for a broadcast. We'll keep you informed on that. And then on April 23rd, our annual Vocational Ethics Day, which is past President Dan Hallberg and his committee put this great show together every year for all of our clubs in the area, all of our area high schools. Unfortunately, that program has been canceled. Most likely, we will still have that speaker come talk to our club, either live or in person, depending on how things pan out. But that's kind of our program lineup in the near future. And then we mentioned earlier, Vocational Day is going to happen this year at Discovery Nexus, the Tech's incubator at the University of Minnesota. It was scheduled for the beginning of May. We're going to be rescheduling that for the end of May, and we'll keep you in the loop. In terms of events, we have to shift some of our social and service projects from April to May. April 1st, the Rotary Happy Hour at the Mez, or that first Wednesday in April, is obviously not going to happen. On the 9th of April, we had a volunteer opportunity at Sheridan Story. That will be shuffled. On the 13th or thereabouts, we had a homeless breakfast. Chances are that will be shuffled. Again, look for information in the bulletin about these date changes. On the 16th of April, we had a social event at the Walker Art Center, have tours of both the outside sculpture gardens and main collections. That will also be shuffled into May. And finally, the Rotary Chamber Mixer, which was going to happen on April 23rd at Edina Country Club or Pinstripes, one of the two locations. That is also going to be shuffled to May. So the good news is we're making our adjustments as needed to give us some time to get through this peak of the virus and awaiting a time where we can get back to connecting face to face, and we will keep you posted along the way. So as we close today's meeting, I'd like to share a quote from 37-year-old Drew Houston, American internet entrepreneur and co-founder and CEO of Dropbox. Since we're talking about startups, Dropbox is an online backup and storage service that I'm sure many of you have or have heard of. During his years at MIT, Drew tried and failed at several startups, including an SAT prep company. After graduating, Drew started Dropbox in 2007 with 2 checks totaling $15,000. 10 years later, Dropbox went public and is now worth over $6.2 billion. Drew said, "Don't worry about failure. You only have to be right once." Jeff has left the building, but I wanted to thank him again for being with us and sharing some of his expertise on the startup market in Minnesota. All good news. Looks like things are moving in the right direction and that we'll find another way to evolve in those very important tech sectors and biotech in Minnesota. Remember as you go about your week that together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change. Across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves, as Rotary pursues its mission to connect the world in meaningful ways. Meeting adjourned. We look forward again to seeing you next week via Facebook Live on this same channel. Have a great week and be safe.